Hello, and welcome to the Ontic Connected Intelligence Podcast. I'm Manish Mehta, Ontic's Chief Product Officer. Join us as we delve into valuable insights and practical advice that will empower you to navigate the complexities of modern corporate security and risk. We're here to share knowledge from experienced leaders and innovators in the field. All right, get settled, and let's dive in. I'd like to welcome Bert Oliveira, Head of Physical Security and Investigations from Citizens Financial Group. Bert, welcome to the Connected Intelligence Podcast. I'd like to tell our audience a little bit about you. Bert is a seasoned security and investigations leader with over 30 years of experience in financial institutions, specializing in physical security, fraud investigations, and computer forensics. As Head of Physical Security and Investigations at Citizens Financial Group, he oversees multidisciplinary teams safeguarding colleagues, customers, and assets through advanced protective measures, fact-finding investigations, and digital forensics. Once again, welcome Bert Oliveira to the Connected Intelligence Podcast. Welcome, Bert.
Thank you, Manish, and thank you for having me. I look forward to our discussion here. Happy to share any insights that I can. Again, I'm here with these insights, which are my own opinion and obviously not that of my company. But I look forward to our discussion.
Thank you for sharing that and stating that up front. So, Bert, tell us a little bit about your background. 30 years, you've worked not just at Citizens Financial, but there have been other places. Maybe just walk this audience through some of your background and what led you to your current role.
Sure. Boy, those years go by quick, Manish. But yes, I've had experience in the industry, dating back to organizations like Bank of New England, U.S. Trust Company, the Royal Bank of Scotland, and now with Citizens. And throughout those years, I've held roles in financial crime investigations, uh, physical security in probably the second half of those 15 years. Really got in more into that space. The digital forensics. We were on that fairly early in the early 2000s, believe it or not, when we really started to see more and more evidence in the form of digital requests for information. So we tried to get ahead of that as well. But throughout my career, I've been surrounded by some just talented individuals who really built some long-lasting partnerships and relationships with industry, with law enforcement, with many of my peers, and that's how you get to success, in my view, is having those key partnerships, and even partnerships like we have with yourself and OnTech.
Bert, I always enjoy talking to you and reflecting on that history. Let's before we jump into insider risk, which will be one of our main topics for today. Let's talk a little bit more about digital forensics. What was it like in the early days? How did that practice come about, and how has it evolved over the years?
Yeah, in the early days, let's just say it was a challenge getting funding, right? Because many at the time didn't truly understand that. And in the early days, it was very, very basic. It was, I think, our first digital forensics lab was literally in a closet with a server, a couple of laptops, and a couple of licenses for some digital forensic tools, right? And what we learned quickly was the value that we could add. I'm always a big believer in solve a small problem and then grow from there. And that's what we did. And we started to demonstrate that we could save the organization quite a bit of money in doing some of our own e-discovery work, while at the same time benefiting from doing forensic analysis on devices early. The focus was on the cost savings, and it quickly grew from there. And now we have a full functioning, lab here in Rhode Island.
That's amazing. That's amazing. How does that tie in any way to insider risk? Or maybe let's start with the history of insider risk and how you've experienced it at the bank and how it's evolved over time.
Sure. Yeah, that has been quite an evolution. And digital forensics, by the way, plays a key role in that. But when we thought about the insider risk, I think years ago it was always that hunt for that one bad actor, right? And I think that has evolved significantly. Right? It's no longer a single malicious actor that you're looking for. That threat's still there, right? You want to make sure that you're looking for that threat, but I think there's also what might call unintentional insider risks, right? You look at things like many data breaches that you see out there, that might not even be the insider risk of that bad actor getting in. It's more of an insider risk from the perspective of carelessness,
Mm,
negligence, uh, bad security practice, lack of awareness, security awareness. I think those play some key threats. And then you embed, uh, uh, we're all dealing with third parties, right? And that third party is in your insider risk ecosystem. So that is what I've seen over the years in my involvement in this business, that it's really shifted from looking for that one insider malicious actor to now you have a whole ecosystem of insider risks.
So let's touch on those ecosystem of insider risk and the carelessness or the inadvertent insider. How do you partner with the other functions within the bank? So HR, legal, what processes, procedures do you put in place? How do you even communicate to the employee base, either when they're being hired or when they're being let go? I can imagine that's critical as well.
It is right, and it goes back to what I said about the partnerships that I mentioned over my career. You need to have that same framework internally, right? The way I think about it is security is a shared responsibility. Every department has their functional value in what they do to uh, um, uh, drive an organization. But collectively, when it comes to security, it needs to be a shared responsibility. So, what I mean by that is HR plays a role in that. Who are we bringing into the organization? What are our hiring practices, our background practices? The development of the culture of the organization is a shared approach. You look at teams that might manage the access control. You need to have strict access control processes, um, uh, DLP programs, right? Ensuring you have DLP programs, incorporating uh, behavioral analytics is also very important. And then again, collectively, making sure that you have a strong incident response team and plan to mitigate that potential insider risk. I think if you do that as an organization, as a collaborative effort, it really strengthens your organization, hardens it from becoming a victim of an insider risk.
Very insightful. Now, for our audience that may not have been in the financial services sector or may only have a loose understanding, talk a little bit about financial crimes and how the makeup of your organization is similar or different than physical security, typical workplace violence investigations, fraud-based investigations, et cetera. What's unique about financial crimes and how it's structured within the bank?
Yeah, financial crimes. So, in all of my years I've been doing this, uh, there's been an evolution there as well. This is gone well beyond the simple, check fraud, pocketbook thefts, right? Yeah, I think as many of us look at how things like bank robberies have drastically gone down. It's just a very interesting uh, dynamic of you see violent some violent crime, we'll call it bank robberies, taking a downward trajectory, while at the same exact time financial crimes taking the opposite. And in this global world, I'll call it, of faster payments, easier access, mobile devices, um, uh, credentials that everyone has, password management. It's created a playground for threat actors to really benefit financially and victimize many banks and many of their clients. So it's a very scary area, to be in.
Is it dominated by very sophisticated criminals, or is it more the unsophisticated? What do you guys tend to see more?
Well, look, I think the industry normally would see a lot of this is a bit sophisticated, but I think we see both, right? There are some that are not very sophisticated, but predominantly we do see sophisticated transnational organized crime groups really uh, targeting uh, the financial sector.
Now, Bert, where does fraud play in all this? So, as you think about both insider risk, as you think about financial crimes, as you think about fraud in particular, again, how educate our audience a little bit about fraud and then maybe how you're organized or the skill sets you might need uniquely to address fraud.
Yeah, I think when it comes to fraud, it's about understanding your individual organization's ecosystem, understanding your products, your services, and then thinking about the different tools, technologies that might be out there to help you with a defense in depth strategy to mitigate those losses, right? How do you detect a fraud early on in its process, stop it at its heels, communicate that so others can look for it, and ensure that these organized criminal actors know that, hey, this organization is prepared, has defenses, and they're going to move on to the next weakest link.
Hmm, interesting. All right, jumping back to insider risk, industry regulations. What's happening? How's that shaping these programs, especially in FinServe?
How I would describe that, look, the regulations, they play a key role in helping organizations establish rules, if you will, right? Implementing legal frameworks, giving us guidance, to these organizations on things like monitoring, things like investigations, things like response plans, and reporting. It really helps us with those guardrails, right, to be compliant, and at the same time prevents us again from any unintentional consequences, right? Things like overreach, big brother effects. impeding on anyone's privacy or civil liberties, etc. So I think they play an important role in this.
We'll get back to the conversation in just a moment. But first, I wanted to mention ONTIC's Incidents, Investigations, and Case Management Solution. As we've been discussing in this episode, investigations can be conducted faster and more thoroughly with the right systems and processes in place. I encourage you to take a look at how ONTIC can streamline end-to-end case management and help your teams move faster with actionable insights. For more information, click the link in the episode description. And you talked a lot about partnering across the organization. Can you think about the moment, either you can pick legal, you can pick HR, you can pick another partner organization, where it could have been a case, it could have been an event or a moment, or it could have been just a trend that was happening externally. But do you recall the moment that you were able to build that bridge with HR or with legal? What was that moment or two that you could reflect on? And what turned them ultimately? What made them a strong partner with you and your organization?
Yeah, it's interesting when you're in the security organization, the financial crimes, the physical security. We see this stuff every day, right? We see these threats every day, um, and we're accustomed and know how they work and what they do. Some of these partners, they don't, and I think what I've always found is being transparent, being a good partner with whether it's HR, whether it's with the cyber defense team, the AML team, the fraud team, working collectively together. It's bringing the threat intelligence to them, demonstrating how these threat actors are exploiting different facets of organizations. It's eye opening. What I've found is they then want you to attend every one of their meetings. They want to spread the word. And it goes back to what I said earlier. It helps foster that that shared responsibility around security because it gives you a little bit of ownership that listen, this is our organization and I'm protecting it. Now that I know about these threats, that look, that threat actors are trying to intentionally get into organizations and circumvent things like HR processes, and the security team told me these are the tactics that they use, these are the things to look for. They come running with, we just found something, you were right, it validates what we're saying too, you know.
Love that. Love that. Bert, you've had some international experience, either directly or indirectly, or you've worked with colleagues all around the globe. What's unique about these programs internationally? Insider risk is one that obviously comes to mind, but it could be any of the topics that we've talked about previously. What's unique, either that we've learned in the US from our international counterparts or that we've been able to share as best practices?
I think as we sit here in 2025, I don't know that there's uh, a, a delineation between a global organization, international organizations versus U.S. organizations. I think we're all in this together. Uh, the 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 evolution of the internet and global payments and has really brought us into one environment. Uh, the only differences might be really in our legal processes around the country. But I mean, I think the way I would answer that is that what's happening in APAC or Europe or anywhere else, South America, we're seeing very similar crimes, right? Whether it's ATM attacks, account takeovers, phishing schemes, data breaches. I mean, then they're not just happening here in the U.S. Uh, uh, Customers, banks all over the globe are experiencing the same thing. So I don't think there's any uniqueness, to it. I think what it does lend itself to is we need to continue building partnerships and intelligence and information sharing around the globe. We're stronger as a protective community involving our partners in every country because there are very talented individuals in some of these countries, and what you might see is something starting, let's just say in Eastern Europe, and then you start to see it in a different part of Europe, and it's starting to expand, and it's going to head to the U.S. By having those partnerships, you see it coming, and then try to put in protections ahead of that. I think that's the big benefit.
Excellent. Bert, in the time that we've spent together, I can sense that you enjoy leadership. You enjoy being a leader. You enjoy mentoring, building high performing teams. I've met uh, team members of yours. The shared knowledge that you're sharing over the years with peers in the industry. Can you talk a little bit about leadership and some of the leadership lessons you've learned that you'd love to pass along to others?
I always love this question, because it's it's a I've found over the years that good leaders, you don't have to do everything. You don't have to know everything. What you need to do is one, surround yourself with talented people, right? Making sure that as you build your team, you're acquiring those skill sets, building a resilient team that is not afraid of change, um, that is looking forward to the next challenge coming around the corner, and then at the same time while you're building a resilient team, making sure that they're at the forefront, that they know that you as a leader have their best interest in mind first. That starts the center of the culture, right? And when you do that, that you can then expand from there. They'll take that; it'll grow naturally to have a security minded culture that is passionate about what they do, and to some degree very loyal to your cause.
Beautifully said. And Bert, for those that are just starting out, building an insider risk program for the first time, as an example, but it could be again on any of the topics, what simple advice would you have for them?
Don't go at it alone. Number one, um, build key partnerships and support around what your mission is. And I think secondly, don't try to solve all the problems, right? The old don't try to boil the ocean. Um, Take an inventory of what your insider risks are, right? And there's always what you call low hanging fruit. Solve that one problem. Focus in that one area. Start there. Start to demonstrate value. And when you do that, the rest will follow. The program will grow organically from there. The support will grow. You'll get more approval for your budget and your business cases that you put together. You start to demonstrate that early, you will get that support, and it will put you on a path to building a holistic insider threat program.
Great advice. We've only got a few minutes left, Bert, and I would be remiss if I did not ask you a question about artificial intelligence, AI. And the answer that I'd like you to give is more your perspective, not citizens, not,
Mhm, mhm.
an industry perspective, but love to get your take on AI and as it relates to the jobs that you're doing.
Yeah, it is really, really interesting. It's both interesting, it's exciting, and it's scary all at the same time. When I think about AI, machine learning, it's everything that we build comes with pros and cons. Pros in us with a security mindset, it's like, oh great, how can I use AI machine learning to help me be more predictive, uh, um, um, quicker detection, things like more having more robust views of what my threats are. Love it. I want to be part of it. It's going to help strengthen our security programs. But then you got to look at, so wait a minute, uh, we built it. Good doesn't exist without bad. AI, make no bones about it, and we are already seeing it, is also being weaponized. So you have to think of also at the same have to think about as we continue to see the weaponization of it, is it going to defeat my controls, my existing controls? I need to think about how AI can potentially circumvent a control I have in place. Is it going to potentially cause me to hesitate on a decision, not implement something, not make a decision that I normally would have made, because now I don't know enough about the impacts of AI. So, so those of you that are listening and are leaders, in the organization, it goes back to acquiring that talent, right? Starting to look for that talent that understands AI, that can help balance the skill set and knowledge around how it can be used, both in a positive and negative manner. Well, then I think just help the industry as a whole with both the pros and the cons of AI.
Very, very thoughtful response. Thank you. Bert, one last question for you for our podcast. What does connected intelligence mean to you?
Yeah, so that's a connected intelligence. So really, that's a term I'm starting to hear more of, and I think it's the to me it's the next level of integrated intelligence functions, right? Taking not yet your just traditional open source information, industry information. It's incorporating uh, uh, data analytics. It's incorporating multifaceted sources of intel to help with with um, um, your threat levels, describing what your threat levels are, because it and think of it almost like a fusion center, right? Capability. That's where we want to head by having that connected intelligence of taking data from multiple sources to help with your assessment of your threat. That is that is exactly where we want to be. And then what you do with that is equally as important. Information sharing with that connected intelligence is critical. And I think we all have a responsibility to, one, know what threats are happening around you and what's impacting your respective organizations. And then secondly, to help the community share that intel. That to me is what helps drive that connected intelligence path that we're on.
Appreciate you making the time for us today, Bert.
Oh, happy.
Our
Thank you
guest,
again for having me.
absolutely. Our guest today was Bert Oliveira. Thank you, Bert, for joining the Ontic Connected Intelligence podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening in. To find more episodes, visit us at ontic.co/podcasts. Don't forget to rate and subscribe on your streaming platform of choice. Know someone who would be a great podcast guest? Or have questions you'd like us to answer? Email us at podcast@ontic.co. This episode was produced by AJ McKeon. We'll talk to you next time on the Ontic Connected Intelligence Podcast.